Hey guys, this is a vlog response to a question that was put to me in the YouTube comments, so I figured I'd do a quick vlog about it. So somebody asked me, how do I make my living now as a developer? So right now, being that I'm an old geezer, I don't actively write code for other people. I do write a little bit of code for myself, but only when I am working on a new course where I'm writing up code examples and trying to come up with a better structure that will help me teach the lessons more effectively. But I did lots of app development and lots of coding for companies back in the day. In fact, I did it for several years, 6-7 years, I think, full time. And then I migrated from being a full-time independent developer, and I started developing my own apps where I would write all the code, architect, top to bottom. And that was, I think I started making that transition in the early 2000, year 2000, 2001, something like that. And the reason I did that, because at one point in your career as a developer, you're going to have to decide whether or not you want to be a developer working for somebody or working for several clients for the rest of your career, which is cool. I know several people who do that and they like it, and they're going to go into retirement very soon. Another thing you could look at is whether or not maybe you want to get into managing developers. You could do that in larger organizations, or maybe for yourself, if after you get a nice stable of clients, you start bringing on junior developers to help you with things and you build up your firm that way. That's another viable option, and I did that as well. In fact, Studio Web, which I registered in 1998, that was the final name of my web development, web design company where I had people working for me. Studio Web, right? Before it was called iDesign, which I should have registered that domain when I had the chance, but anyway, whatever. It had other names as well. When you're learning business and you're developing a business, you go through different name changes and different ideas, and you get caught up in that. When you're creating a name for your business, though, try to just keep it simple and easy to spell. That's my advice with regards to that. Anyway, so at one point I made the decision, and it was a hard decision because I really love the code. But I said, I don't want to be a coder deep into code when I'm in my 50s and whatever, 60s. But again, like I said, a lot of people like that, and that's cool. I have friends of mine who are a little older than me in their 50s and early 50s, and they're still coding and they have great careers. You make a lot of money doing that, especially if you get into managing teams and so forth, which you should be at that point if you got pretty good interpersonal skills. That's something else I don't emphasize enough, and I should really maybe put this together in a structured program, if you will, as opposed to my random vlogs here. Interpersonal skills, being able to listen to people and being able to communicate with people. If you can do that and combine that with good coding skills and good development skills, whoa, you're going to do wonders for your career or your business. Anyway, back to what I did. So at one point I made that decision. I'm not going to be a freelance developer or working for somebody as a developer anymore. I wanted to get into developing my own apps. So I started developing apps, and I spoke about one I had before. I had like my dating site, which was just a project. It turned into a business on its own. But then I had all these swingers came into it, and I didn't want to be forever associated with having a big swinger site. So I shut that down. I don't know if I should have maybe sold it or something, but that's in another vlog. You can watch that if you want. And I had other things as well. I had a, what do you call it? I guess it was a remote sales rep system. Before Salesforce.com, I had one of my first clients. I had people want to invest, and that's a whole story I won't get into now. So I've had several products that I wrote for myself from scratch and launched, developed some revenue with them. But I was very much somebody who was a nerd interested in tech. So a lot of times when I would explore these ideas, it was to explore technology. So I would see that, like in the Java world, I did a lot of my work in Java in those days, and some new libraries would come out, or some new version of Java would come out. I want to experiment with something, so I said, "Oh, I'll build this or I'll build that." That's how I worked. So going on in terms of money making, I said to myself, I had to develop some sort of business where I own the IP, the intellectual property. So I started developing websites, and I took over killersites.com in, I think it was 1999 or 2000, and I built it up from there. I don't write code except, like I said, when I'm just prepping for courses and trying to come up with some cool examples for people to sort of teach them how to do certain things. But where my developer skills come in handy is in launching new products. For instance, I have a meeting tomorrow with one of my partners in a business that's unrelated to anything to do with coding, but my major role coming into this partnership is my development and coding experience going back to the 90s. I'm able to launch product very quickly, and this is for a business that has nothing to do with technology, except that it uses technology to do certain things. So I'm being vague because it's a new thing and I don't want to talk about it at this time. Anyway, so right now what I do is I use my developer skills and experience to help me with all my other businesses. It could be, well, my other businesses. I don't have 25 businesses, I have a few things. So that's where that stuff comes in handy. So even if you don't see yourself being a developer in 10 years, or even 5 years, or whatever years, or even now you don't want to be a developer, learning how to code and understanding the process is going to just give you a huge skill set that's very monetizable in many different ways, and maybe not directly. Like I said, even though I don't write code today, my coding and development skills helps me immeasurably in so many other areas. So for instance, one of my focuses is Studio Web, which is an app that teaches code. The public uses it, but its real focus is educational institutions. I have lots of schools who use Studio Web. And we are about to sit down to architect Studio Web 4. Studio Web 4 is significant because it's a total rewrite from scratch. We're at 3.1 now of Studio Web, and the reason we're doing a rewrite is because after 7 years, several coders, the code base is it's getting pretty old. One of my friends, it's also a former mentee of mine, and he now is a CTO of a company that's funded by VC Capital. They raised a couple $1 million. And you know, I like what he said. I don't know where he got it from. He said there's in mature apps you have code and your code, and that's because of changing requirements, changing developers. Libraries that you used originally have gone really old, they become incompatible, you start having to patch. Anyway, that's the case with Studio Web. Now, Studio Web is pretty much a bug-free app. It works really well, but for future development, I have to do a rewrite because the infrastructure that Studio Web is based on is ancient. The ORM, the object relational mapping framework is ancient, yada, yada, yada. So we've been bypassing stuff, using web services and so forth to keep the code base going. But I've decided to pull that trigger and say, okay, that's it, we're going to start from scratch. Big job, big job. But because we know exactly what we want, and because we're staying within the same language and level language, PHP 7, we're going to be able to borrow some code and take some code from the old code base, bring it into the new, and base the whole thing on a brand new architecture, a brand new infrastructure, which really excites me as a coder because, ooh, I can leverage all this cool new stuff, right? And now I'm not going to be writing the code. I'm going to be involved, and I am involved in managing the architecture every step of the way, from the UI, the UX, the database design. I just got the first database design as suggested by the lead developer, based on our conversations. I said, we need this, you got to be mindful of this, we should do this as the problem we saw for old database design from Studio Web 3 branch, and this is what we should do. So he just sent me a few days ago the database structure. So I'm going to be sitting down and we're going to sit down, look it over, you know, see what we think, bat it back and forth. So that's where my development skills comes in handy. I'm able to get right in there, right into the nuts and bolts of the process to make sure things are done properly. I'm not just going to do this with the database. We're choosing different middle layer frameworks and so forth, and all kinds of different things. Mindful of what the app needs to do now and what I see for the app within the next year. Because I want to bring in, one of the things I want to do, and I can't get into too much detail, but I want to bring an AI component into Studio Web, something I think will enhance it nicely. But anyway, so back to the original thing. What do? I use my developer skills to develop my own IP, my own intellectual property. This is harder to do at first because to develop an app that generates revenue is harder than just selling your skills where you pay big money to do the work. Both are good. Depends what you want to do. You know, some people want to develop apps from scratch for different clients. So a client will come to you and say, I need to build this, this, and this, and this. And you go in there with yourself or your team and you start developing the apps. That's cool. I have a good friend of mine who does that. Big revenue. They're a couple million in revenue. Pretty good revenue for a small development house. And then other people are specialists in a particular framework, like a particular CMS, like WordPress web developers. These guys make a lot of money because there's so many small businesses out there who are dependent on WordPress. So these guys, these WordPress web developers, specialize in WordPress, installing, configuring, locking it down for security, plugins, skinning, themes. And so being able to do this, you got to know your WordPress, you got to know the WordPress API, you got to know PHP, you got to know HTML, CSS, JavaScript, a little bit of jQuery, blah, 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 blah. So there's different avenues to use your developer skills. That's why I keep saying, becoming a developer, you can't lose, even if you don't write code.